All right, welcome everybody. Uh, Welcome to Fearless Conversations. I am Jiva Salerno, and we have a really exciting conversation planned tonight. It's going to be so good. Oh my gosh. I have Denise Bond with me. I'm going to tell you all about her in a moment. So let me start out by saying that I am Jiva Salerno. I'm the founder of Over 40 Fearless and Free, an international women's movement of over 11,000 members worldwide. You can find us on Facebook. I'm a writer living in Southwest Florida, and I believe that women over 40 can live happy, juicy, fulfilling lives. I'm interested in the intersection of science, spirituality, and psychology, mostly personal growth. That's my thing. I'm a lifelong learner with degrees in biochemistry and international policy. I'm also a certified yoga instructor with advanced training in yoga for trauma recovery. So if you are not in this group, and watching us, Over 40 Fearless and Free is working to change the world by helping women to become happier. We inspire women over 40 to recognize their own value, power, and potential in order to create a life they love. Because when women are happy, they impact the lives of everyone around them. And that's how we're changing the world. And one woman who is contributing to this, who is definitely changing the world by helping women to become happier, is Denise Bond. She is a motivational speaker, a coach, a multi-entrepreneur, and founder of Her Breakthrough, which is a program to help divorced women move on, rebuild their identity, and break through to create a whole new life and to find and attract true love.
Yes.
So, Denise's unique coaching style is derived from her own personal journey, which we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to be talking about how Denise got to this point, what her journey, especially with marriage and divorce, was like, and how she has overcome so many obstacles to get where she is. Um, not just through divorce, but in her whole life, because she has really accomplished so much. She's so fascinating. Wait until you hear her story.
Thank you. I hope I live up to all of that because that's a really big grand opening. But thank you so much for asking me to come on, and thank you all of those that are joining us or watching the replay. I'm honored. I'm just nobody who's trying to impact somebody. So I'm excited to be here.
Well, is there anything that you'd like to add to your bio before I quiz you and ask a million questions about your personal journey?
I am sure that will all come up. There'll be some, asterisks as we go along that people will mark. So we can
I,
just jump in.
I want to add one little thing before we get into the personal journey, the story of how Denise got here, and that is the multi-entrepreneur part. It's so interesting to me. She comes from both a fitness background and a construction background. So a woman in the construction industry. We got a lot of questions about that one. I'm some good stories there.
That was some tough times in there. Absolutely. Yeah.
So not only was she a woman in the construction industry, but she was a business owner. She owns a construction company, and that is all before she found her passion for helping women rebuild their lives. So hold on to your hat, ladies. This is a good story. So let's start out the story with where you grew up.
Well, I am from Southern Illinois. My parents are pastors, so I was raised in church since before I was born. We were going to church. So My family also owned a business there in Southern Illinois as well. And now I'm in Houston. So my whole family ended up moving to Texas about 19 years ago. So I guess I have to claim, I'm claiming Texas as our stomping ground now. But so Southern Illinois, Midwest. I'm a Yankee for those that like to classify those terms.
So you grew up going to church a lot with
Yeah.
your parents who were pastors. And
Yeah.
when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I planned on being a singer. Love to sing. I could sing before I could talk. So growing up in church, I was actually my father's music minister. Ended up marrying my best friend at that time, which was my parents' associate pastor's son. We got married at a very young age. I was 19 when I got married, and we did music, and that was our world. We grew up doing music together, and I actually wanted to go away and go to college, and my mother told me that I needed to stay and get married, so I stayed and got married.
So this is interesting. You got married quite young.
Quite young.
And were you married one time or more than one time?
So I have been married a total. I don't like to count the second one because it was the same person, but I have been married. If you got to count that one,
No, it doesn't count.
it doesn't. I don't think it counts. I don't count it. I've been divorced twice.
Yeah. Okay.
3 times.
Okay. 3 times the charm, my friend.
3 times the charm.
You got it. You've been married like 14 years now, right?
But no, we've been married for 2.
Yes.
I was single for, we just celebrated our 2nd year anniversary yesterday, but was single after my 2nd divorce for 14 years.
Yeah. So let me go back for a second. You were
Sure.
Getting married young. Now, I think that a lot of the problems in marriages stem from, and I'm like all about psychology, stem from our expectations that we have going into it, and that we tend to not talk about these expectations. So there are these unseen expectations floating around that really don't come up until it really hits the fan, right? So what kind of expectations or ideas did you have about marriage when you were going into it?
Oh my gosh, I was so young, Eva, at 19. Looking back now, it wasn't even me. It's like that was somebody else. I can't even relate to that.
Yes.
I was just so young. And you and I have talked about this before. We've got childhood trauma or issues that we're dealing with as well. So, of course, at 19, you're not aware of any of those things. You're just, hormones are raging. You think there's an expectancy. For me, I don't know that I had an expectancy of what this marriage was going to be like as much as I had, this was just what I was supposed to do. Think society tells you it's your next step, right? You grow up, it's either college or marriage. Usually it's marriage, maybe college, where I'm from, we're from a small farm town. So it feels like it was just a few years ago, but I'm 44 now. So 19 years was a little ways ago, where yes, you were encouraged to go to college, but there was still that fine line of it's time to get married. And so I come from a lot of, wanting approval, not quite fitting in the right space of being a pastor's daughter, and some things that were there. And so I just did what was expected of me and what gained approval, if that, and I think you understand what I'm saying when I'm saying that. But so I didn't have this great fantasy that this marriage was going to be everything I had hoped. Now you've got your ideologies that society gives you of what marriage is supposed to be like, but we were just 2 kids. We didn't have any idea what we were getting into. And I didn't want to get into it. I wanted to go to college, but I did. Now, I'll tell you, at this time, Jiva, I just turned 19 when I got married. So my brother committed suicide on July 4th. So we just had his 25-year anniversary this past weekend of his death. And I can tell you at this point in time, and even then, I didn't regret getting married because it gave my mom and my dad a reason to get up and move. It gave us a reason to have something else that forced us not to sit so long in that pain. And it was a horrible, just a horrible experience. So looking back now, I don't regret it. And the marriage itself, we should have stayed as friends. We didn't. There was not a love connection there, and it eventually grew. We did stay married for almost 5 years. We were heavily involved in music ministry, and it was, that's all we had that's all we had growing up anyway, and that's all we had at that point. Was we were best friends who did music together. During that time frame, though, I knew that there was supposed to be some kind of connection, and there was never anything fulfilling that was there. There was a respect and an admiration for what we could create, but as far as a husband-wife connection of what I thought that was supposed to be, it didn't exist. So I ended up making a decision to leave. And I will tell you, being a pastor's daughter who was also the music minister of that church, it was not a favored decision. My mom actually told me to have a baby and that would help me. And my dad told me, that would hurt the church. And I knew it would hurt the church. But at that point in time, I was like, I give an analogy of being like a bird trapped in a cage. Like I could see this was not my life. This was not me. I had gotten myself into a position of living a life that was projected onto me to live for approval. And I was losing it. I couldn't do it. So I ended up leaving. I ended up leaving.
Well, that's really interesting because when we grow up in dysfunctional homes and we become people pleasers, a lot of times what we do is we create this false self outside of ourselves that we think will get all the approval, So this false
Absolutely.
self is doing all these things and acting in all these ways that, we think everybody will like every little thing, So we don't really know who we are. And it's really hard to create intimacy when because I had that same thing when I was married the first time. I was still in that really crazy codependency thing, and we were the same kind of thing, like good friends, but definitely not that level of intimacy, because even though the physical intimacy was there, the emotional intimacy was not there, because I was projecting this fake self and he was projecting a fake self.
Yeah.
And when you can't like really be yourself and be vulnerable and talk about how you really feel and what's important to you and like really be yourself, you can't have any real intimacy. So that's so interesting that we have that in common. And I wonder if that happens a lot with like the first marriages.
Oh, I'm sure. It depends on your, I was young, so I was not. Now, would the same thing probably have happened? It's not even, I'm still learning who I am. And I'm, like I said, I'm 44, so I'm still on
Oh, honey,
on
it's
this
only the
journey.
last few years that I'm like starting to get a clue. I mean, I wasn't that young when I got married. I was like 31, I think, when I got married, and still didn't know who I was, or because I was still playing out that false self. But
Absolutely. I think we get married to fill a void or to find that level of acceptance in someone else. You know, I definitely was not whole or complete within myself. I didn't even know what that meant. I had lived in kind of that space for so long, that had no idea what it meant to know myself and to be okay with speaking and loving who that person was. I had no idea. No idea. And like you, it's just been the last couple of years where I'm like, oh, this is why I've done all of these things over and over again, all of these years. And oh God, I wish I would have known this stuff 20 years ago. And so that's where this passion comes now for you and for me, is like, I wish somebody would have, you know, at that time said, hey, this is okay what you're feeling. This is why you're feeling it. And it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. So then what happened? You left him
So
for a little while.
I left. I loaded up my vehicle. I didn't want anything. I just wanted out. That's how bad I wanted out. So I'm in my early 20s now. Still, you know, not afraid of starting over because I'm so young. I'm so young at this point still. But loaded up everything and actually shipped my car back. I didn't want anything. That's how bad I wanted out. Now I'm a little bit wiser, so I don't give that kind of direction for some people. Now I'm like, hey, it's not too bad to, you know, take some stuff with you. But in that process, my family we ended disowning me for about a year. So I was out on my own. I stayed with a friend. I slept on her front porch because she had a baby that would cry, and she was a single mom by herself, and we were just two kids trying to figure it out and make it. And so so I did anything I could. I worked 3 or 4 different jobs all at the same time. I just, whatever it took, I was going to make it. I was not going to fail. I would rather be in that mess that I was in trying to make it than have to go back to what I was in
back
again.
You don't want to be crawling back.
Nope.
Yep.
But you know, typical as we do sometimes, I think when we find ourselves free and we don't really necessarily know the healthy steps to get to that place, I was not in a good, healthy state. You know, I was for the first time free and didn't really know exactly what to do with that. Thank God I worked so much, because that kind of kept me out of a lot of trouble. And then lo and behold, I'll tell you how this happened. I got sick. I was good for a year. I was happy. I didn't care if I was working 80 and 90 hours a week. I was happy that I was finding myself and figuring it out on my own. And I had gotten sick, and the doctor had told me I needed to call my mother and tell her that I was sick. I lived in St. Louis, Missouri at this time, so I moved away. So I called, and of course they came and wanted to rescue me. And since I still had not discovered how to go, you know, find myself and heal from all of this stuff, I wanted their approval again. So I ended up marrying this gentleman again. And it lasted, I don't even know if it lasted 7 days, Steve. I don't even know, but it did not last very long. I see your facial expression. I know. But it was all for approval. I was so desperate at that, you know, I missed my music. Cause I stepped away from my music as well. And I missed that acceptance and that approval. And it did not last for very long that time around. I realized, what did you just do to yourself? You just put yourself in something that you broke free from. And so I didn't make it very long. I can't even remember if it was a divorce or an annulment. I don't have any idea. It was something. But I got my parents' approval. You know, you're just a kid, you know. I was a kid and I wanted their approval.
Yeah, and you were sick too before that. So you were kind of shocked, probably, like, wait, I don't know if I can do this on my own, right? And kind of went back to Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really understandable, I would say.
Yeah, it was 100% so that I could, and those were issues that I had. That was some trauma that I had had as a child, was not feeling like I had their approval or their acceptance. And it's, I, as adults, even though I didn't know it at that time, we're all just children still trying to get our needs met. And I can even still see some of that still rise up, even in present time, that I like, oh, wait a second, I know where that comes from now. Uh but so didn't make it, couldn't put myself back into that situation. And thankfully my family and I, we were able to make amends when I came back throughout that process. And they supported me a lot. I think they knew, that I needed them. I was not in a good place. So yeah, so that was the end of round one. Still very young, still very young.
And when did you get into fitness or the construction?
All of my life, I've always played sports or been active in the gym at some point. I did not get into fitness as a form of owning my own business until, gosh, it's probably been about 8 years ago. So it was not a staple of my life. I'll give you the quick version so that we don't have like a 4 hour long interview here. I met another gentleman who now who I am now, can look back and realize that he and I connected because of a type of trauma. He was a pastor's son as well, who kind of felt like he was a little bit of the outcast. And so there was a connection there. So here I go, jumping back into not anything healthy again, but trying to find that acceptance, trying to fulfill that void. And as you know, when you meet someone else who has a similar trauma, that connection is very, very strong in the level of acceptance. You accept each other because you connect on a deeper level of whatever that trauma bond is. I didn't know any of this at that time. I thought I was in love, right? I thought we had met this guy. We're young still, I thought I was in love.
Well, in a way, he got you on a little bit deeper level than the other one, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was in a similar state,
Right.
a little bit. And so I knew that this was not the right relationship for me. I enjoyed the run, and then I felt like the run was over. And so at this time, my family had moved to Texas and I was still in Illinois. So I ended up following them to Texas shortly after. And this gentleman, I had broken up with him, knew that it wasn't where I needed to be. And as we do as women, sometimes that feeling of aloneness, and, I still wasn't quite in the same fit as my family. I still am a little bit of an outsider, a little bit of the rebel child. So here I find myself again into a relationship that was not based off of approval this time, but it filled that void of acceptance. So again, these things from childhood have just, shown up in all of these relationships of mine. We lasted for 5 years. I apparently have a 5 year mark. So it's kind of a running joke in my family, telling my current husband, if he can make it to 5 years, he's won. But we started a business together. That relationship, we didn't have any idea of what a healthy relationship looked like. So you've got two people filled with trauma. Again, no way we could be successful in that marriage. And so we ended up, I decided I either had to face the decision of having a child or leaving. And I talked to so many women that were my friends, that all they had was their kids. Their marriage was dead and empty. And they thrived because of their children. And I didn't want that to be me. I wanted to have a marriage that was a marriage, that he and I were partners,
Yeah.
that and I found myself again in a marriage that we didn't have that. And so I was faced with, do I have a kid so that I can have some type of fulfillment? And I'm like, no, I can't do that. And so I decided to leave again. So here now I'm 30. So I'm second divorce and I'm 30. And I left. I didn't want anything. And I made a decision when I left that time that I would never be reliant on a man for money, for identity, for anything again. I knew in my spirit something was off. I was putting myself in situations where I gave completely of myself in those marriages, lost my identity, was all about that person meeting their needs, hoping that mine would be met in the process. And I can tell you, I woke up in that marriage, and I didn't know whose life I was living. I'm like, what has happened? I'm up, and I love horses. So anyone I love horses, but I was up at 5 a.m. feeding horses. And anybody that knows me knows, they're like, you were doing what? And I'm a people pleaser. So that's
No,
one
you
of
were.
I was very codependent. I'm a fixer. All of these things I've discovered. And so because I am that, or had that, I would put myself all in and lose myself completely in these marriages. So here I am again, that bird in a cage analogy. Like, whose life is this? This isn't I'm trapped on the inside, watching another life being portrayed out in front of me. It's not my life. It's not what I want. And so that time around, Chief, instead of being smart and just leaving, I actually blew that marriage up. I ended up, I had an affair, and ended that marriage. We actually were going to counseling. Here's an interesting thing you'll love about counseling. We were going to counseling, and the counselor told me that I would have an affair, that an older man was going, based off of all the counseling that he had done with me, that an older man was going to come and protect me and take care of me, that the man I was with didn't know how to do that.
Okay, here's what I don't like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When someone says something like that, they can put the idea into your head and you can subconsciously play it out. Do you think that happened?
No, I think he was spot on. I had never had anybody take care. I felt like I hadn't ever had anybody take care of me. And
no, but you wouldn't even have gotten involved with someone if he had.
No, I was so lost, and I was so lost. I had so desperately wanted to be seen, wanted just to feel like I mattered. And, and again, that stems from childhood stuff I've dealt with all the way up. So here I am now at 30, and I've cried for years in this marriage, wondering why there's not this connection. I didn't understand. And I knew I was in trouble. There's a moment in each one of my marriages where I knew that I was done. We had planned a trip to go to Memphis to pick up my ex-husband's friend, and I was so excited about going to Memphis because being a pastor's daughter and being involved in the church, you kind of, all eyes are on you all the time. So I was excited to go to Memphis because I love music and I love blues music. So I was going to go to BB King's bar there and be able to listen to some live music. I mean, I can smile about it now because I get lit up, So I'm so excited about this weekend. And we got there, and my husband at that time got a headache and wanted to go to the room. And I'm sitting there in the room, and I've got this, how you're in a hotel and there's a mirror on the bathroom door. I'm sitting there looking at that mirror as I'm going to the potty. So excuse the visual, but I'm looking at myself and I'm like, no, you're not doing this. You're going to go out. If you want to go out to listen to blues music, you are going out. And I had that whole conversation with myself because I just felt like that was a turning point, that if I stayed in that hotel room again, my life was just being sucked out of me again. And I know that's a weird analogy to see, but that's what I felt.
You know, it's so interesting that we have these really intense, soulful moments in bathrooms.
In bathrooms.
Right? It's so common. Think of Eat, Pray, Love. It opens up. Did you read Eat, Pray, Love or watch the movie? Opens up with her on the bathroom floor, you know, like you're in the bathroom having this conversation that's like really pivotal. And it's like our sacred place, the bathroom.
It is. It was.
Anyway, it was a turning point. Go on.
It was a turning point. I knew and so I got up and I went out and I said, you know, I know that you don't feel good, but instead of me missing out on something that I have looked forward to for so long, I'm going. Here's some Tylenol.
First, for the first time in like.
That was the first time.
So long.
First time. It sure was. And I knew at that moment, I should have been more aware that, hey, it's time to, you know, I need to take proper steps for myself. Looking back at now, and for several years, looking back at who I was at that time frame, I was just a girl that was so desperate for attention. I was coming from such a place, from such a deficit, that I was making choices that I would not normally make. So now I have grace when I look at myself back then and the mistakes that I've made and the choices that I made, because I know who that girl was. I know what pain she was feeling, where I was hurting and I was lost. So now I've got 2 husbands down. I've just lost. So now I know who I was then. And for years I've carried guilt about the marriage was done. So I didn't ruin the marriage, but the exit strategy that I did is something that I've had to forgive myself for, you know, and it took quite a while to release that guilt.
Of reinforce, like, that wasn't the best choice. That's not who I really want to be as a person who would have an affair. Like, you know, I did it and I made a mistake and it's probably not going to happen in the future. Right. Because
absolutely.
That's not my values is what.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. And I deal with a lot of people who have guilt over something, and if you're not careful, that guilt can actually become your imprisonment, and it's like chains you just carry throughout your whole entire life. And now, you know, people are like, well, are you okay talking about it? And I'm like, well, I want people to understand that I can look at myself. It's like I'm removed from myself. This was a different person over here. And I have compassion for her and I hurt for her because I know what she was feeling at that time, and doesn't make what I did okay, or doesn't make that okay. But I can understand what tools I was working with in that moment. And I did the best that I could, given all of my circumstances. It was really just my exploding. I blew up. I was sick of all of it.
And listen, if you make it to 40 without making any major mistakes, you're either not human or you're lying. Okay.
Absolutely.
We all have done a few doozies by 40.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. But that's all now I look at it, it was all just a combination of all of these. You've heard me talk about approval, acceptance, feeling overlooked. I mean, I can label all of these things that I wasn't aware of, that I was trying to get filled, thinking that these relationships would fill that void for me. And when I realized it wasn't, that was my,
Yeah.
whatever it took to get out of whatever I was in, I had to get out.
So this level of awareness doesn't happen overnight.
Oh, Lord
So
Jesus, no.
tell us a little bit about that journey of being single for a while and starting to figure out who you were and
Yeah.
starting to start over. So share with us some of that.
So second divorce, as we're getting ready, the day we were going to the courthouse, the night before that, my husband comes and tells me he's filing for bankruptcy. Well, at this time, I didn't want anything from him. I was going to start over. I mean, you're done when you get to that point where you're like, just let me out of this. Dear God, let me out. I just wanted out. And I knew I could rebuild because I've already done it once. So I didn't like having to start back at the bottom, but I was willing to do it. So, so we had started a dirt and a construction company while we were married. I did the books. I didn't do anything out on the yard. I had no idea. I did drive a dump truck every once in a while, which was kind of funny, but I had no idea how to operate the equipment or anything. So night before our divorce, he comes in and tells me he's filing bankruptcy. Now, I had built a couple houses. So I'd started kind of getting into building houses a little bit on my own, and had some money saved up. He actually went in and took half of that money out of the bank. So that's a whole, that's some things I teach about too as we go along. And so when he came and told me he was going to file for divorce, I said, well, you can't. I'm trying to open up Firehouse Subs. I'd bought that franchise at that time. And I said, a bankruptcy will hurt me. It'll hurt my credit because my name is on a lot of that. And he, was just like, well, get ready. This is what's coming. So I said, well, just give me the business. I don't know anything about it, but just give me the business. And so the night before our divorce, the attorney is signing over this business. And so that next day, I was a proud owner of a construction company that I didn't know anything about.
A failing one that you had to turn around.
I did not even realize how bad, because we had been separated for 6 months. So I had no idea what he has done for 6 months. He had contracts there was lawsuits getting ready to be filed. So here I am, a female, young, going into these construction companies, begging them to give me an opportunity to fix it. These guys looked at me like I was, they laughed at me. It was pretty funny. But when I left my divorce hearing, I had a lunch set up with some investors for my firehouse. So it's pouring down rain. I remember this clear as a bell. It's pouring down rain. I walk into Cheddar's for this meeting, and the guys are like, well, how's your day going? I said, well, I got divorced this morning, so it's going pretty good. And they were like, oh, okay. I said, and I've got a dirt company that, I'm not really for sure anything about, but I'll figure it out. And the gentleman sitting at the table says, oh, well, I own a dirt company. Maybe I can help you out. We can figure some stuff out. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, he and I ended up partnering, and we, for 5+ years, ran a successful construction company.
Amazing.
So it was great. We did really well, worked well together, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing, but you talk about God's timing. I mean, I left,
but you learned.
I learned
really learning the business.
Yes, I did. I learned. And so we, in 2008, when the economy kind of shifted around a little bit, we ended up having to close that company. And then I went and moved to Louisiana and opened up medical spas with a plastic surgeon, friend of mine there. So when I left that divorce, I said earlier, I made a decision that I would never be financially independent on a man again, ever. I wasn't saying that I didn't ever want to get married, but I was so busy in survival mode that there was a 14-year window there that I wasn't interested in dating, wasn't against it, but wasn't out actively pursuing it. What I was really interested in was making sure that I was okay. I didn't want to ever be down at the bottom again and having to work my way up. Now, these businesses that I started, Jiva, I when I moved to Louisiana, I lived in a little hole, mouse hole. It was so bad my mom wouldn't even come visit me. You like open the door and there's a toilet. I mean, it was a little bitty space, but I was doing whatever I needed to do to get my bearings and get my feet back under myself. So
now you started that business, the med spa business, with a friend who had
with
expertise in that field, right?
A business partner. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the interesting thing about what you're saying is you are pointing out the importance, the power of partnering in business, that men have known all along, forever. Like if you go back, 100, 150 years, and you go back to the times of Andrew Carnegie, one of the steel magnates, he was a really interesting person. He had a lot to say about becoming successful. And one of his principles that he talked about is this idea of the mastermind, which is when you partner with somebody else for the purpose of like mutual benefit. And it's like the two minds are better than one. And Absolutely. So this is starting to be kind of a recurring theme in your story, first with the dirt company professional, and then this other person, how do you feel about that? Are there any other masterminds that you put together?
Yeah, I've always been, I always know that I'm stronger with together. If I have a business idea, I try to focus on what are my strengths and what do I need to make this business flourish. And so you're absolutely right. Collaborations, partnerships, that has always been something that I've always leaned into versus running away from. Now, what we've had to learn throughout this journey of mine is that my relationships, whether they be on a romantic level or on a business level, I've had to learn to make sure that I'm in a healthy place myself, because some of those same traits that I've talked about have, over and over again, started coming up even in some of my business relationships. And so I finally, it's been probably about 10 years ago, after I had dated a guy, and I had dated two gentlemen during this 14-year span, and they were alcoholics. One guy was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and I'm like, what in the world am I doing? The first gentleman that I dated after my second divorce is nobody I should have ever dated. And I didn't realize it. Like all my friends are like, what are you doing? Why are you, no, you do not date this kind of guy. What are you doing? And it took me a little while to figure out why had I put myself in these kind of relationships with guys that
why do you
if
think?
you tell, oh, I know what it is now. I finally went to a counselor after my third relationship of being with somebody who I'm like, I'm going crazy in these relationships. They're so unhealthy. The dynamics are horrible. And I'm a pretty strong, I'm a pretty driven, I'm, claim to be kind of independent, but man, I'm a hot mess when it came to relationships. So I went to a counselor and I said, okay, look, I can't blame these guys any longer. I am the common denominator in all of these relationships being ridiculous. So it's me. Something is going on here. I'd like to figure out what it is, because I do not want to put myself in another relationship like that. So I had 3 different relationships that if you had put me on a dating app and the qualifications of those men came up, you and me both would be like, no, you're not. No, that's not our ideal candidate. I'm a fixer.
Yes,
I
like I have been in the past too. And I think that it really makes us feel good about ourselves. Like we have value if we could fix somebody. Now I'm kind of like, you gotta fix yourself.
yeah. It took me a while to
I got enough
learn
trouble.
that.
I gotta fix
Yep.
myself. I don't have room to be fixing. I say that in the
Yep.
end, I do have this little project of a man. No,
Yes.
but he
Yes.
started with a pretty good base, so it's it's just a little tweaking. It's not like
A
a
little tweaking.
total renovation.
Yeah. No, I was going against, knowing my needs wasn't being met. I was still in there. And the first gentleman, again, in all of these situations, it's like I'm removed. I'm looking at someone else now, because it's years later that I'm looking back. That first relationship, I was in such a deficit and wanted to be wanted so badly that my rationale was not at play. It felt great to be wanted by a man, to capture a man's attention, because I was deficit is the word that sticks out to me. I was in such a deficit that I opened myself up to places, to people I should never have opened myself up to, just because of that desperate need to be validated, wanted, feel something.
How did you start to overcome or fill the deficit?
How did I? Well, by being in that relationship and being wanted by a man.
But I mean, in a
Started.
healthy way. How did you start?
Oh, and so when I went to the counselor after these, relationships are ridiculous, and these men are ridiculous, like embarrassed to even say I've dated this they're like, you dated who? I'm like, yeah, I know. Let's not even talk about it. When I sat down with with the counselor, and said, something is off. What is going on? We started working on, all right, Denise, you're a fixer. You want to be wanted, so you will give up of yourself so much just in order to feel something.
Trading.
Yeah. And so once I started realizing that I've had these patterns, and I can go all the way back to when we first started this conversation and see all of these patterns that came along, then by discovering who I was, how I got to where I was, then I was able to understand, okay, this is what you're trying to get out of this relationship. You're never going to be able to get that out of that relationship. And I started being able to be okay with myself, find my own voice, start knowing that I needed to be okay within myself, instead of trying to bring someone else on to complete that picture. And it took a while. Like you said, this is a journey. It's still a journey. Every day I'm discovering something new, or something may raise its head still, and I'll be like, wait, where does that come from? So it's a process that I've now gotten to where I'm more in tune with. All right, why am I emotional about this? Should I be emotional about this, or is this a trigger that I'm so now I'm able to process that. But it's like peeling back layers of an onion, basically. I mean, it's just about the time you think you've got one layer, you're like, oh God, okay, wait a minute, I got like the whole rest of it still there to go through. So it was just doing work of, what voids am I trying to fulfill here, and seeing that there was actually patterns of that codependency, patterns of wanting to fill a void and get that acceptance and that approval. And it's taken a lot of work, but now after being single for 14 years, now I was able to, when I met my husband now, I kind of had some requirements. I kind of threw him off guard a little bit because he was not used to having a woman tell him, hey, these are my expectations. This is healthy expectations, not, and again, I'm careful with expectations because you don't want to go in with
but
over expectations.
You have to have like limits and levels of what you will accept and what you won't accept, and boundaries and all that healthy good stuff. So you were just being able to articulate that to him, so which is fantastic.
Yes. And now I'm not a fixer. So like you, I'm, where are you at already? Because I'm not going to, I had this false belief that given the right set of circumstances, somebody will rise to the level that they're meant to be at. Well, that's what I wanted for them, right? That's not what I'm not responsible for that person wanting to live out their best life for whatever it might be. And boy, have I been guilty of friendships, romantic relationships, business relationships, thinking
I tell
that
I could see the best in someone. I could see stuff in someone that they didn't even see, and like try to bring it out. And actually, to be honest with you, some of the men that I've dated have ended up kind of being in a better position after I dated them.
Every single one,
right?
Every single one. Yes.
We're good at renovating those men.
I am great. But in the process, yeah. We could start.
I wasn't any better. But I can tell you what, this one that I'm in this relationship now, I have grown so much in the year that I've just like skyrocketed, and part of it has to do with him being a solid, secure person and allowing me to grow for once. Absolutely. Instead of the other way around.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you've been married for a couple of years with this person, and it's a good situation, happy situation, feeling good. How did you get into helping other women?
So with my fitness business, which started after the spas, my partners and we parted ways after we opened the medical spas, and I didn't have my next business adventure ready. I didn't have a plan. Normally I had a plan of, I want to open up a retail store. I opened up a clothing store when I owned my construction company too. And I didn't have a plan. So I was a little lost. And so I was dating a gentleman at that time who I had not met his family. I didn't know anything about his world because I was so busy working in my world that he was a part of mine. Women that are watching, please do your due diligence about investigating out their world as well. I did not. And that was a hard wake-up call when I moved to that same location, and then was a part of an environment that I did not. If I had been aware of that before I came down, I probably would have made different decisions. But I had people asking me what I did to work out, because I always worked out, always would take care of myself. And it naturally evolved into, I started training people. I didn't have a business. So I started training people, and I can't do anything just simple. So then I had to open up my own fitness company and started doing corporate type wellness programs and apartment development programs. And from that, when COVID, I'd always wanted to go online because my businesses, I was always attached to my businesses. And so the idea of having a business where I could be wherever and work, or a business that still functioned without me, was so rewarding sounding. And so when COVID hit, I thought, all right, I've got the construction company going. I'm building, I build houses, I flip houses still. We started that back up in 2018. And so I am one of the few female contractors, I think, in East Texas. I have a girlfriend who started now, but as far as it just being, at that time I was single females again in construction world, and that's been a lot of fun. It's still a very different world, but it's been a lot of fun. So I build houses, flip houses. I thought, since I've got some cushion there, I'm going to experiment with going online. So I actually started our online courses directed more towards fitness. Well, me being a pastor's kid, ministry, and a fixer. I'm a fixer still in some areas, right? That's just who I'm going to be. I want to help. I want to inspire, and I want to use my story. If I can help you by listening to what I've done, then that's who I've always been. And so
there's nothing wrong with it as long as you don't lose yourself.
Correct. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that's just my nature, that it's just part of my nature. And so when I'm training my women in person, we were talking about relationships, who they're dating, who they're not dating. I'm giving relationship advice. I'm giving advice about businesses. And so when we started my online fitness business, it started kind of being the same thing. It was a more of a full spectrum approach. And I'm like, okay, fitness is something I love, yes, but I am so passionate about letting women know that it doesn't matter what you've done, what kind of crap you have gone through. If you're divorced or never been married, you can still be a strong, vibrant, fierce woman who creates a life for herself that she absolutely loves. Our past doesn't dictate that. The labels other people put on us doesn't dictate that. And that I can get fired up about, and I can talk day long. If you want me to talk nutrition and exercises, I mean, I'll talk with you, yes, but my fire starts burning when we get to talk about how the tribulations or our failures were actually these stones that we use to step on to get ourselves to this level now where we look around. And like I said, I look back at these women I've been, and it's like I was different women. I'm like, wow, I'm a completely different person than I was being her, but being her is what helps me become me. And it's just, I love it. I want everybody to know that whatever they've been through, that doesn't dictate or write out their story. They can make their story into whatever they want it to be.
So how exactly are you working with these women now? Are you working as a coach, and you have an online program, right?
Yes. So yes. Yeah. So we have an online program. It's called Her Revolution. And within that program, we take an approach of, we talk about healthy habits to create. So I do focus about taking care of the vessel, about sleeping appropriately. There's just healthy habits. What is it in our lives as women? I've found that if one area of me, we were talking hormones before we started here, if one area is out of whack, I feel out of whack, and I want to show up present every day. And in order for me to show up present mentally and physically, I've got to have some stuff and some habits in line that helps me do that. And sometimes when we're knocked down, or life has kind of, tossed us around, for me anyway, that was the first thing that would go, exercising or eating or sleeping. Those are all out the window. I'm not sleeping. My anxiety is high. And so I'm just kind of feeding the monster even more. And so I kind of want to help bring in some habits that help you feel like you're in control of something. I remember feeling out of control, because life got turned upside down by my own doing. But I think being able to control something helps get momentum going, helps you feel like, okay, I can do this. And that confidence starts building, which then you're able to build other things on. So then, oh, go ahead.
So the program, Her Revolution, it's an online program. Is
Yes.
how what do you mean by that though? Is it a course with
So,
modules, with videos, or
so we have, so
one-on-one,
we
or
do, it's a mixture. It's a mixture of one-on-one, because there's some things that you don't, you need to share privately with me. There's different levels to it. Depends on, when I talk to my clients that want to join me, we kind of talk about where they're at, what they need, but it's group coaching calls, or it's one-on-one, or it's a mixture. For now is where we're building it out. And there are modules that are sent out that you go back and watch the course as well. But there's a lot of interaction. I feel like I need a connection. And that's one of the things I was worried about when I transitioned from in-person coaching to online, is how do I want that connection, because I learn a lot from doing visual courses, but I learn so much more when I'm sitting there with my coach, talking it through and having that connection. So there's a lot of connection, a lot of community. I know one of the things that I lost was my friends, I family, I lost everybody. And even when I would try to talk to somebody, I mean, I sounded like Debbie Downer every time my mouth opened, and I'm like, this person doesn't want to hear what I'm going through, nor could they really relate to what I was going through. So there's a community environment that's in there as well. So, and we do a lot of teaching. It's just great. It's a great course.
so you will put the information about Her Revolution into the show notes, both
Yes.
on YouTube and on Facebook, right underneath this.
Yeah.
We'll put the
Yeah.
information about Her Revolution. But you also have something called 5 Survival Tactics for Life After Divorce, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us about
Yes.
that and how people
Yeah.
can connect with you on that?
Yeah, if you want to, underneath this video or YouTube, you can, we'll have it where they can reach me through Facebook, but you can leave just the word guide underneath this video, and I'll make sure that I reach out and give that to you. It's some things that I put into place that really helped me be in the right mindset space on a daily basis. And I'm a big believer that we are what we put in. And so if I'm wanting to rebuild and reset myself, that means I've got to fill myself with something new, something that keeps me lifted up. And so there's a couple, 5 different tactics that I use on a daily basis to help me to be able to feel empowered. And affirmations are a big part of that as well, that I am putting myself and helping myself believe in who I want to be. So it's 5 survival tactics that I feel like every woman, whether you're divorced, single, it doesn't matter what your relationship status is. I think we all can benefit from pouring back into ourselves on a daily basis.
Fantastic. Well, you have so much life experience to share with women and to help them, go down this road of starting over. That I just want to kind of acknowledge you and applaud you for your efforts of helping women to, change their lives and get going again. It's really fantastic what you're doing. So how can women connect with you? How can they find you?
So I'll put at the bottom of our link, I'll put our Facebook on there, but it's Denise J. Bond on Facebook. You can find me there and connect with me there. And I'll put my links in. And at this moment, that's the best way to try to get in touch with me, and I'll connect back with you and we can set up a time. And again, if you want the 5 survival tactics, just type in guide underneath this video and I'll make sure that we reach out and get those to you. And the program, Jiva, not only focuses on healthy habits, but we also talk. So HER is an acronym for healthy habits, economic empowerment, and real relationships. So I really dive in and teach some of the journey that I have come through. I bring on other guests that talks about their journey we talked about how I like collaborations. If I don't feel like I have the strength in a certain area that somebody needs, I'm going to bring somebody in there, because it's very important to me that what I felt was I didn't want to be dependent on another individual for anything ever again. I wanted to be whole within myself. And so that is my passion, to help women find that completeness within themselves in all areas, so that then when they're ready to meet that person or create a relationship, they know what they're looking for and what comes in as an additive to what they've already created. So I'm excited about it. Thank you for having me on here. My
Fantastic.
story's a long one, so
Thank you for being with us and sharing, your hard-earned wisdom. I think that a lot of women are going to resonate with your story and appreciate hearing from you. So thank you so much, Denise Bond. Find her on Facebook, everybody. And
yes.
thank you again for another fearless conversation. We share the truth here.
Yes, we do. It's no filter here in this area.
We'll look forward to having you back again. Okay, Denise?
Yeah. Thanks, Shiva. Thank you,
Thanks.
everybody, for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
Bye.